Hello, everybody. Scott Golden here with Golden Opportunities Coaching and the Golden Opportunities Coaching YouTube channel. Welcome to those of you who are new. Welcome back to those of you who are seasoned veterans of what we do around here. We break things down into easy, discernible language, and we do that in the most simple way possible. And we do that multiple times a day, most days, and we do that in an audio format. So, if there's a topic you'd like to see covered, please feel free to reach out and comment below. Also, like, subscribe, comment, do all that good stuff. We're trying to grow the channel. We're about 40% of the way to being monetized, which will give us the ability to give some much needed funds to charity. It's rough out there, and my heart is hurting for people who are struggling, especially due to COVID. So help us to reach that goal if you would, please, and thank you. Anyway, so we're going to talk about 7 common parenting styles. Now, I know that there are probably much more scientific approaches to this. And so if you know more scientific names or if you know more psychologically based names, then that's great, and there's value in that. But in this form, I'm going to break things down into language we can all understand, just so that the psychology doesn't get lost in the terminology. And there are more parenting styles than this, but these are common that I see. I do work with, or have worked with at-risk teens before. I also have worked with interparenting dynamics coaching before, so these are just things I've seen. So the first one is the boss parent. So the boss parent has very clear rules, and there's also very clear rewards. These are parents who have moral codes and standards for their children. If you succeed at them, you get rewarded. If you don't, you get punished. Most of these individuals grow up to be reasonably compassionate. They grow up to be, I wouldn't say necessarily always rule followers, but rule respecters for the most part. These are individuals who are going to seek a sense of order, and they're going to be most comforted when things follow the pattern with which they grew up. The strength to this is it's easy to develop a moral compass. The difficulty to this is when a person comes from this parenting style and they're confronted with something that comes from the opposite, it can be hard for them to relate to people that don't come from a similar parenting style. Maybe not exactly the same, but if it's not similar, it can be a struggle for kids in that environment to really do well. So the next is what I call the ego parent. The ego parent has very high standards, but there's very low give back. So this would be the parent who says, I want A's on your paper. And so the kid goes to school, the kid gets an A, comes home and expects praise from the parent, and all they say is, I knew you could do it again. So the praise is low, the reward is low, the standards are high, and the criticism when the standards aren't met is rough. It's uncomfortable. It's sometimes borderline abusive, although not fully abusive, but it's very dismissive and it's uncomfortable. And this is a common parenting style for parents who maybe are emotionally disconnected, or they have regrets about how they turned out. And so they impose these rules on their kids. They think they're protecting their kids, but they may not be as emotionally available as the kid needs them to be. The next one is the easygoing parent, the permissive parent, the easily persuaded parent. These are the parents who might be hippies. They might be, hey, you can stay up till midnight as long as you get up for school, and there's very little rules. The only time there's rules is when this parent might look bad, when this parent might be judged by other parents. But other than that, these parents are pretty well comfortable with giving the kid as much freedom as the kid can stand without chaos developing in their house. This is an awesome parenting style until there's a real life challenge. Because if the child doesn't believe that the parent has any authority, or that the parent doesn't care and going to let them get away with it anyway, There's no fear of consequence, which ultimately means there's no reason to behave in a manner that's moderate. So you can take a risk and your parent will clean up after you. And that can often be a negative parenting style to have. The plus side here, though, is these kids are usually very creative. They're very individualistic. They're very unique. They may be more tolerant of other people with differences, be they racial, sexual orientation, um, learning styles. They're going to be very tolerant people. They're going to be very permissive people because that's how they're raised. So there is a place for them in society. The next is the neglectful parent. So usually neglectful parents are parents who don't want to be parents, and I am a huge believer that if parents don't want to be parents, societies all over the world in 195 countries should make that possible for them without any repercussion and should provide them with counseling after they make the decision to walk away from the child, and there should be alternatives to adoption early in life. So maybe I get to the point where my child is young school age and I just realize I can't do this. And so I place the child elsewhere and I'm not punished for it. The reason I'm so big on this is because I believe that it would cut down on parental neglect and abuse cases. I believe, therefore, it would cut down on the number of cases of um, um, mental illness for teenagers, anxiety and perfectionism in teenagers, and other things. A neglectful parent does create a higher likelihood that the child or teenager is seeking approval consistently. And either that or they become emotionally cold. Either way, it has a hard and fast consequence that's not good for the child. Although our society is not progressive enough to say that parents should have the right and ability, and this should be equal for mothers and fathers, right and ability to say parenthood isn't for me after having a child. I think if we truly want to address the mental health crisis, then government authorities or charitable organizations or somebody, or maybe a combination of all of the above, need to step in for people who realize after parenthood that it isn't for them. And I'm not talking about when the child is a baby. I'm talking about when the child is older. The next is the addict parent. So this could be gambling, alcohol, drugs, any form of negative addictive behavior. This is a parent who cannot control themselves and therefore doesn't have the capacity to consistently desire to be involved with the child. The addiction takes the lead and is the motivating factor for the parent. This is obviously a very toxic and unhealthy environment for all involved, including the addicted parent, but also including the child who is dealing with the addicted parent. And it is extremely difficult. Many times this leads to rehoming of the child with other family members, or the child giving into addiction, mental and emotional illnesses themselves, and or the child becoming an addict themselves later in life because of what they saw. But addictive parents are usually very dangerous. The next is the sarcastic parent. So this is a parent who believes their child should be tougher, has a worldview that may be somewhat cynical or dismissive, may look at their child and say, you're not going to make it, but I love you anyway. So it's an insult wrapped in a compliment or a compliment wrapped in an insult, and that's the constant reinforcement that the young person gets. Now, they may know deep down that the parent loves them, but the insult or sarcastic humor or sarcastic undertone to the way the parent parents does leave the child with a lot of self-esteem related issues and insecurity about whether there'll ever be enough for someone to love all of them or whether they have to only perform in a certain way. This can be extremely difficult for especially young females who may develop body image issues or perfectionism issues or anxiety issues as a result of the sarcasm hitting closer to home on a consistent basis and wondering about their own self value. The last one, obviously, is abusive parents. This can take the form of mental, emotional, physical, sexual, financial, or psychological abuse. Obviously, this is the worst of the cases, and while it's not always harder to spot, it is harder to address. The child or children affected by it need years of intervention in order to kind of regain their own self value and an effective worldview. The parents need counsel, whether they're going to be involved with the child or not, both for the self forgiveness of what they've done to the child and the understanding and behavior modification to not do it again to future children. It's shocking to me how many children go into the Department of Family Services system only to have parents who come out years later and have children from other relationships or same relationship, and then they keep one child but they've lost others, and this goes on for years. It's scary to me. It's mind-boggling to me that in a first world country this is still a thing, but it is, and it affects children greatly. So hopefully this audio in terms of parenting style is helpful to you. I hope that it has brought some enlightenment into your life in some way. Keep your feet on the ground, your mind in the moment. Until next time, everybody.